Let's here we go. Let's turn that on. Hey, good morning. I see Hinda's here. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to have to run out very briefly in 10 minutes
Okay, no worries.
to let Jean know that it's 7:45.
Got it. Are you in Florida or you're here locally now?
We're leaving Florida this evening.
Because I gotta say, I see some palm trees in the rear view mirror there. Okay,
Yeah, we're here.
good. Well, enjoy the last few hours there. All right. So last time we met, we were discussing what we are not to eat as we proceed on Friday. So we're going to read the comments of the Mishnah Berurah step by step along the journey of the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah's comments. So let's start with Zion, which we did at the very end of last session, but let's review that. So we're Reish Mem Simon Reish Mem Tes Sif Katan Zion in the Mishnah Berurah. Here we go. Also likboa. The Ramachel is also likboa that it's prohibited to establish a meal on Erev Shabbos. The Isa Bagamar, the Haisa Mishpacha B'Yerushalayim Shekava Sudasa Erev Shabbos V'Nekra. There's a story, I think it's in Gittin, that there was a family that established was for one family in Yerushalayim that always made meals on Friday afternoon. It's not even clear if it's Friday afternoon, by the way. It's just on Friday on Erev Shabbos, and they were uprooted from their. They're uprooted. Clearly, the point of the story is to teach us that it's not a good idea, even if made by the letter of the law. Certain things are allowed. Clearly, it's not something that the rabbis were smiling at. They certainly were frowning upon it. Again, the Shulchan Aruch says, just to review step by step as we go, you're not supposed to have a meal on Friday that's abnormal for you to have had on another weekday. This halacha applies as well to Erev Yom Tov. The Yom Tov nami mitzvah l'ongo u'lechabdo. There is also a mitzvah of kavod Yom Tov and also of oneg when it comes to Yom Tov, of delighting and honoring the Yom Tov, as there is a mitzvah of oneg Shabbos and kavod Shabbos. So the same halachos would apply and extend to an Erev Yom Tov day, which is not surprising, by the way, when, as I mentioned last time when we were learning, the machlokes that appears in Arvei Pesachim between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi about whether or not you can engage in a meal Erev Shabbos also is Erev Yom Tov in that discussion. The Mishnah over there discusses the unique case of Erev Pesach, where maybe there's even more stringency involved. Maybe Rabbi Yossi would even agree, who's not as stringent when it comes to another Yom Tov or Shabbos. Even he might agree that there's a need to be more strict on Erev Pesach because of the mitzvah of matzah that you're going to encounter later that night, which is a deoraisa, and you have to have the proper appetite for that mitzvah deoraisa. Okay, Sif Katan Tes, right? The Shulchan Aruch says afilu hiseudas erusin, even a meal that accompanies the betrothal between a man and a woman, and there's a celebration. If that were to happen on a Friday, that's a no-no. Now, this requires some explanation. Take a look here, and this is why this comment is a little bit longer, because this is the pshat in the text of the Shulchan Aruch is not how you're supposed to read it. Take a look. Perush im eras kodem lachen. If the engagement, the betrothal, took place prior to Friday, meaning it wasn't on that very day, Osir lasos haseuda be'erev Shabbos. You can't then make the celebration of the erusin on Friday. The af de sudas erusin he mitzvah. Yes, it's a mitzvah. Sudas erusin is a mitzvah because you're celebrating the betrothal between the husband, the man, and the woman. Mikol makom hayel lahakdima. You should have done it earlier. Like, why are you waiting till Friday to engage in this? You could have done it Thursday. Avalim Eras the Erev Shabbos, but if they actually Bo Bayom they were betrothed on that very day, on that Friday, on Erev Shabbos, then Mutter Lasso Sasuda. Then if it's Bo Bayom, it's that day, then it's okay to have such a festive meal. Now you might say, well, why are you bothering with betrothal on a Friday? You should do it on. If you didn't do it before, just postpone it until after Shabbos, Sunday. So it's clear that is not something you have to do. The Kevan that the Erusin Sharia be'erev Shabbos, since Erusin is permitted on Erev Shabbos, mishum shelo yikadmenu acher, so that no one else should come along and chap the wife before he closes the deal. You're allowed to then at any moment close the deal and engage in kiddushin with the woman. Yes, this is a principle that is not made up by the Mishnah Berurah. I believe this is a principle that is already discussed in the Talmud, that you should not postpone such things because lest some other man sweep her off her feet and you lose your chance. Which is interesting, that the Gemara had this fear that you would lose your opportunity. Anyways, so Mamela Shari has Seuda Gamke. So if you're going to allow the Kiddushin on Friday because of whatever reason, then the party that accompanies it should also be permitted on a Friday. So the Chashuva Kamo Seuda Smila, it's like a bris mila, where that one you can't control the time when the 8th day is going to take place. Upedron Haben, you can't control when the 30th day after the baby is born falls out. Shizmana Kavua, those are fixed by time. So it's like that as well if there's an Erusin that takes place on a Friday. Umikol Makom. Now what was that, Steve?
I said I think V'chein, right? I think.
Sorry, I skipped a line. Sorry. V'chein im hayu hanis. Thank you. Hanisuin be'erev Shabbos. If the nisuin, the last stage of the marriage, them coming together under the chuppah, again they separated everything in the days of the Talmud and between the Kiddushin and the Nisuim, or even plenty of time even post the Talmud being written. That was the minhag. Obviously, more recent times, that is of course not our tradition.
Gene and I did. We separated it.
You had the Kiddushin one time and then the Nisuin a different time?
Correct. Because my parents thought I wasn't taking it seriously enough. Because I wasn't planning a big fancy wedding. I had no interest in the trappings of a big fancy wedding. And my parents thought I was not taking it seriously enough. So that's what they decided to do.
And Gene went along with this?
He was thrilled. He couldn't wait to get married. So he figured.
You had the Erusin. You had that part, but you didn't have the chuppah, the nisuin part of it until later.
Correct.
How many months in between? I'm very curious suddenly.
Maybe a month.
Okay.
Not bad.
Wow. Okay. That is definitely not the norm today. I don't think it was the norm even when you got married.
Definitely not.
Maybe Steve, you could, just to let me know if that was.
No, we were very traditional.
So were we. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's a really interesting story, and you're the first person that I've met who has ever had the kiddushin and the nisuin not on the same day or even within the same 5 minutes.
We went to one once where the families were in the United States and in Israel, so they had the nisuin here and the kiddushin there.
Yeah.
Maybe a month or something like that.
So you are aware of another case. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Hinda, you have good company there. Someone else is. Are you sure you weren't invited to the farmer wedding? Anyways, the Mishnah Berurah continues as Mikol Makom lechatchila tov v'nachon. Here we go again. The Mishnah Berurah kedarko b'kodesh. Better lechatchila. It's good and it's more correct. Im efshar, if it's possible, lidchos hasuda lamacha or yom acher. Even if you get engaged, if you have the betrothal on Friday, Try, can you have the party on Saturday night or Sunday? Better than if you could do it then. That way you don't you have a big meal on Friday. I feel Erev Shabbos, even if it's a Friday betrothal, try if you can to push the meal off to Sunday. That's all when we're talking about a Sudas Erison, actual Erison, where there's a bracha that's recited and a Hariyat Mekudeshasli and a ring is given. That's an Erison. But if it's just like what we call today getting engaged, right, making a match, right, they would have called it matchmaking, right? They make a shidduch, right? An engagement party is not a sudas mitzvah. You shouldn't be having engagement parties on a Friday. It's not the proper time to have an engagement party. Kain Kasav of Prima Gadim Simon Tafmem Dal. That's what the Prima Gadim writes. It's okay to make the shidduch on Friday. The couple wants to get engaged, or in some communities the matchmaker closes the deal between the two sides. That can happen on a Friday, but the party that celebrates it should not happen on Friday. I don't know what they did at Hinda and Jean's Arison. If they had did you have Tanaim
Yes.
at that?
Yes,
Were the
yes.
Tanaim?
I have to correct you. I have to correct myself. We had just the Tanaim. That's what we had a month in advance. Okay, so I misspoke.
Oh, okay.
We had the Tanaim a month
You had
in
the Arison. Yeah, the Tanaim,
Right.
which is still an odd minimum.
I know.
Because but
Because
so
after-
when you wrote those Tanaim, or when someone wrote the Tanaim up for that moment, the month before you got married, did they look different probably than the Tanaim we signed today? I assume that they actually talked about the importance of bringing things financially into the marriage from each side.
The works.
The
Yeah.
work, right? So our Tanaim today are fake. Okay,
Okay.
I've actually done this today where I've done a wedding, or I've helped Larry Morgan certain weddings as well, where the Tanaim, there was a mistake on the Tanaim. You're not like when one of the witnesses signs the document, you're not supposed to cross them out. One time, one of the witnesses they made a mistake and they crossed their name out and they wrote. We didn't even redo it, because the whole thing, I'm letting you on the big secret. It's a big joke to give two more people a keyboard, which is fine, good, let it be. The Tanaim, if you read them, actually, all they say is the parents, the father of the bride and the father of the groom agree that they're going to walk their child to the chuppah. And what would happen if they didn't do it? Nothing. There's no financial implications to this document. You're signing something that just is very symbolic. It goes back to a time when you would have made a financial agreement between two families, that when we get to the actual wedding, he will bring such and such to the marriage, and she will bring such and such a dowry into the. So it was a real financial document. Today it's not. We
didn't do Tanayim for that
wedding,
reason. We just didn't do it.
You didn't do it.
My father-in-law was very upset, but we didn't do it.
Yeah, there's really no reason. It's it is what it is, and so no halacha is violated if you don't do the Tanaim today, because the Tanaim are just to stipulate during that time between the Kiddushin and the Nisun, which used to be in Talmudic times at least, it was a year usually. Anyway, so he says here, that which they used to have mine mirkachas. I believe this means like different types of spices, right? That they would have at a Tanaim, at a Ksivas Tanaim. I don't know why they use spices. I tried to look a little bit why they use spices. Not sure. But whatever it is, that's, sometimes at even at the Chassid's tish. You ever notice how the Chassid's tish, the food never quite adds up to what's going on over next door where the kala is. They put out some pieces of cake and some whatever. It's still good. Don't get me wrong. But there used to be traditional foods at the Tanaim. Those are not called the Seuda, right? So if they were writing the Tanaim on Friday, because that was when they were sort of making the shidduch, they were closing the shidduch, and they put out some of the traditional spices that they put out and whatever little bits. That's not a Seudas mitzvah. That they don't need to worry about. Okay. Sif Katan Yud. Kavod HaShabbos. So you're not supposed to engage in these types of meals because of Kavod Shabbos. V'yeshikosku hatam shvitoch tirdas haseuda lo yisasku v'tzarchei Shabbos. Some say that it's not about coming into Shabbos hungry with a good appetite. It's about that if I'm so busy with this meal, I won't prepare for Shabbos properly. So as a gzeira, the rabbi said, don't engage in these meals on Friday. Okay, Yud Aleph. Shikanes l'Shabbos. You're supposed to enter into Shabbos with an appetite. Sha'af she'ochla baboker. Even if you eat a really, really large meal in the morning, since you've made a larger meal than you're normally used to on a Friday morning, you won't eat quite with the same appetite once Shabbos rolls around later that evening. Okay, I'm not sure if that's true or that's not true, but the Aruch HaShulchan writes here, which I think is true, that if you have a short Friday, like the way we have in the winter here, and he writes that in B'yamei Achorav Shahayamim B'Kitzarim, Lo Yochal Shum Suda B'Erev Shabbos. He's like, you should really be careful not to have a fancy breakfast with many courses, because by the time 4:30 rolls around, you're going to be having Suda Shabbos already. So he writes here, he says, and I think this is really a great line. He says, Klal Shel Davar Hachacham Einav Barosho. The general rule is as follows: the wise person, their eyes are in their head. Meaning, you'll figure it out. You use some common sense and figure out. Yeah, I you know what? It's a short day, and now I'm having lunch at 1:30, and really Shabbos is in 3 hours. So if I have a big lunch right now, even though technically it's not 3 hours halachically prior to Shabbos, because the halachic hours are shorter in the winter. Reality is that if I have a big meal, if I have not even abnormally, but I have my normal Friday big lunch that I have on Fridays, then it will ruin and maybe spoil my appetite for Shabbos dinner. He says, you figure it out. Use seichel. It's good advice always. Okay, Yud Beis, Bris Milah. So the Ramah had added here that a Suda Bismana you are allowed to engage in on Friday, like a bris milah or a pidyon haben. So he writes here, afilu im eina bashmi leidasa, even if the bris milah is not taking place on the 8th day. Kagon shaya chola bashmini v'nidches. The baby was not ready for the bris on the 8th day, and it got pushed off. And the first day it was the baby was ready, and we're not learning Hilchos Milah right now, but if a baby is really not well for whatever reason. Not just jaundice. If a baby has jaundice, so generally speaking, the moment that the bilirubin comes down and the color of the skin becomes a little more normal, I believe that we will perform the Mila immediately. But as soon as the doctor gives a clearance, if there was really some other condition that the baby was struggling with, could be that baby was born premature, the baby was born and it had to go to the NICU for whatever reason, and there was some issue. And Baruch Hashem, it all works out. Even if it kind of clears up pretty quickly, the halacha is in Shulchan Aruch that you're supposed to wait 7 days from the time that the baby becomes healthy again, give it an opportunity to go 1 week, and then you engage in the bris milah. So let's say that day falls out on a Friday. So what happens? You go forward with the bris. We still call that a fixed time because that's really when the bris is supposed to take place by halachic standards, right? This is the first moment that it can happen. Because every moment really is the right time. That's the correct time for this baby to have the bris. You're not really supposed to go 1 day with the baby being uncircumcised once the time has come for the baby to become circumcised. And the same halacha applies by a pidyon haben. Even if the pidyon haben didn't take place when it was supposed to take place, and now we're past the 30th day. Since by the letter law, liftoso, there is every moment there's an obligation now to fulfill the mitzvah of Pidyon Aben. And when the child becomes bar mitzvah, that obligation switches over from the father to the child himself, and has to be done right away. So this has happened, by the way. There was someone in our community who discovered for many years they thought they were a Levi. Their last name would have indicated that they were a Levi, and turned out that they did some digging after, I don't know, somebody passed away, and they just ended up starting to do some family history, and turned out they were not Levian, and they had a firstborn son, and they got a phone call, and they said that, we need to do a Pidyon Ben. Can you do the Pidyon Ben, Cohen? So I said, of course. They planned it for a few days from that point. I know that they had spoken to one of the Rosh Yeshiva at Yeshiva University, if I'm not mistaken, was Rabbi Willig, but I don't want to misquote, but I believe he said he spoke to Rabbi Willig, and Rabbi Willig was insistent that they do it right away. They should do it right now. Like, go get the person, you don't need to have a minion or this, so you don't have to have a fancy meal. You'll throw a few, pieces of bread in the toaster or whatever. He wanted it to be done right away because each and every moment that you go without having done the Pidyon Ben is a moment that you didn't do the mitzvah. So anyways, we ended up doing it, I think, a couple of days later. And this, not child anymore, adult, it was in his 20s. I did a Pidyon Ben. No, they did not put him on a silver platter. He was standing on his own 2 feet. And we did the Pidyon Ben. There's actually a text for doing a Pidyon Ben when the person themselves is redeeming them. They're redeeming themselves, which is not the normal situation. Okay. Anyway, so in these situations, of course, you could do a seuda in those moments. The Aruch HaShulchan adds one more type of meal to this. He says that if there was a bar mitzvah bismana. Now I know today we always celebrate a bar mitzvah on Shabbos, or almost always celebrate a bar mitzvah on Shabbos, or on a Monday or Thursday when there's a Torah reading. But in theory, if there was a bo bayom bar mitzvah, sudas bar mitzvah, the Aruch HaShulchan writes shizmano hayom. Okay, so that's how the community normally celebrates bar mitzvahs, on a bo bayom basis. So then it would be allowed. But again, I don't think that's the minhag in America today. Yud Gimel. Mutter dehi gam kein seudas mitzvah. Ve'ein lidchosam imnei seudas Shabbos. Seudas Shabbos is a mitzvah, but so is a mitzvah to have a seudas bris milah or seudas Pidyon Ben. So, if you're engaged in a mitzvah, it's almost like the concept of osek a mitzvah, pater min a mitzvah. You don't have to worry about the Shabbos meal right now because you're engaged in this mitzvah meal. You should try, though, if you're going to have a bris milah or a Pidyon Ben on Friday, to do it in the morning. There's really, by the way, so the bris milah has to be in the morning. You can't do a bris milah at night. A milah balayla is not a milah. And if a milah was done at night, you would have to go back and do what we call hatafas dam bris. You'd have to actually go back and do a little prick and draw a little blood, meaning even though you've done the whole procedure, it doesn't count. But a Pidyon Ben done at night is, I believe, permissible. So I'm not sure why you wouldn't engage with this mitzvah Thursday night after nightfall. That would be a way that you could avoid the Erev Shabbos meal. Plus, that makes more sense because if you want to have a seudas Pidyon Ben and you want people to be involved, that's on a practical level. That's a better time than a Friday morning. Anyways, as we did last year, by the way, with the Seudas Purim, it turned out it fell out on a Friday, so you have a mitzvah of Seudas Purim, right? So that's a mitzvah too. So you should try to the halachas. You're supposed to try to have that meal early in the day, kind of have a deluxe breakfast. But you really can, by the letter of the law, have that meal later on in the day. And what you would do is that if your meal ran into Shabbos, you would pause the meal, it would stop the meal right as Shabbos is starting, and you would make kiddush in the middle of you would cover whatever the food at the table, particularly the challah, whatever bread at the table, you would cover it and you would make kiddush, and then you could uncover it and continue your meal. We're going to talk about that. That's called Pores Mapa Umakadesh, which is if you are having a meal late in the day on Friday, you can turn it into a Shabbos meal. It is frowned upon, as you see even here. It's not something that is ideal, but I'm aware that I know Rabbi Morgenstern himself at his Sudas Purim last year did this because he wanted to have a Sudas Purim, festive Sudas Purim with family, and they did it later in the day, and they did the halachic mechanism of Pores Mapa Makadesh. They covered the food at the table, they engaged with Kiddush, and then they continued their meal. We will talk about that a little bit. It comes up in this simon, or if it comes up in the next one, or in one of the coming simanim. I think it comes up in the coming simanim when it comes to Kiddush. So we'll get there. Anyways, Yud Daled, V'lecho v'lishtos, that you are to eat and drink without gvias seuda, you're allowed to eat without having like a formal meal. What is not included in this is that you're not allowed to drink, and here I think we're talking about alcoholic beverages, until you are completely satiated and full of alcohol. This goes to your point, Hinda, that you tried to make 2 weeks ago. I hadn't yet seen this comment in the Mishnah Berurah, but he kind of makes your point about the wine. You were talking about a case of drinking wine late in the day on Friday. He says you're not supposed to become full. If you're going to fill yourself up with alcoholic beverages, you're going to ruin your appetite. And how do we know this? Because it's like a feeling. A feeling kind of testifies to this fact that drinking can also make you feel a little full. Depending on the type of alcoholic beverage, you can drink and it can fill you up. Certainly, I think beer can do that. Side problem, you may also get too drunk to really to properly enjoy your Suda Shabbos. Maybe you will be completely nullified altogether, depending on how much you drink. You should really try, ideally, from the 9th hour, halachically, about 3/4 into the day, to not drink prior to Shabbos. So that was really your feeling, actually, Hinda, last time, that before Shabbos is not really the best time to be drinking. I hear you. Apparently, the Mishnah Berurah also thinks the same way. Again, by the letter of the law, it's permissible, but in the spirit of sort of coming into Shabbos with the right appetite, he doesn't love the idea of drinking late in the day. Tes Vav. This is discussing the point of even a meal that's regular during the week. That is permissible. It says here, look, hainu kamo va'afilu. Really, it should say va'afilu. And even a seuda that is normal, so that's okay as well. Obviously, it doesn't need to say that if you're going to have like what we might call you're snacking on something, you're not even having what's normal for your Friday lunch. You're just noshing on something. That's certainly mutter all day long. Right? You don't have to fast. There was a practice, as we're going to see probably next week. There was a practice of some pious Jews who fasted on Fridays. That's not really recommended, but you are allowed to certainly nosh on things throughout the day. But filu mitzvah himana gamkein leka. There's not even a mitzvah to sort of stop snacking. Okay, you're allowed to nosh and snack. That's normal human behavior. Mutter kol hayom min hadin. That's by letter of the law. That is, sorry, I skipped a line. But filu b'kviyas seuda, and even when it comes to having a sort of formal meal, kevin she'ena osa seuda rachava, as long as you're not having some large meal, rak kemo ragil b'abachol, but you have. So I have pizza every Friday because that's what they serve at the school. So if I have pizza every Friday, that's normal because that's what's always on the menu for Fridays. So mutter mikol hayom min hadin. That's really by the letter of the law, always the whole day. Aval mitzvah lihimana v'chule. But it really, from the 9th hour and on, you should try to avoid even the normal meals because you're getting close to Shabbos. And okay, if you want a nash and snack, okay, but try to avoid even the normal meals later in the day because of Kavod Shabbos. It's a mitzvah to try to not even have the kind of meal you normally have during the week from the 9th hour and on. But if you start the meal, you do not have any requirement to stop. And when we get to Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, we'll see there that if Shkia does come along, if your meal continues to sunset, you need to stop the meal right away, and you're not allowed to have anything. You're not allowed to have water until you make Kiddush on Friday nights. So we'll talk about that again. As I said, that's the whole idea of Pores Mapa or Makadesh. Though generally speaking, by the way, once you light candles or whenever Shabbos starts in your household, you are not allowed to even have water until you make Kiddush, because that is supposed to be the first act of eating or drinking once Shabbos has begun. Yud Zayin, Mitesha Shalos Lamala from the 9th hour on. Hainu Shalos Zmanios. Again, we're talking about Shalos Zmanios here, not count 9 hours from when the day 9 60-minute hours from when the day starts. It's based on the time of the year. 12 equal parts of daylight hours. And so we're talking about the last quarter of the day of daylight hours. When we call Malcolm Mira Deviyamos HaChoref. This is what the Aruch HaShulchan pointed out before, that there's a mitzvah to, not even engage in any kind of meal, normal meal, even from the 9th hour. Sorry, when the days when it's the winter time, when the days are short, it's a mitzvah even before the 9th hour. If you look Kodem Tesha shows, Kol Shu Mishayer Benafsho Shali Dezeh Lo Yeh Ta'ev Lechol Balala. If you are about to eat that meal and you're like, this may actually ruin my appetite tonight and I'm going to eat less and enjoy my Shabbos meal less, then you should think twice and try to do the mitzvah ben amuvchar, the best practice, which is to not eat that, to eat such a meal on a short winter afternoon. Okay, we'll stop here. Next time we're going to pick up with Gimel, which related to what I was discussing a moment ago, which was that there were certain pious Jews who fasted on Friday, and this is not something that we do. It's not something that we recommend. You're not really supposed to enter into Shabbos feeling afflicted. We do this once every so often when a fast day falls out on a Friday. There's only one fast day that can fall out on a Friday. Anyone know? Trivia question. What's the fast that can fall out on a Friday? Only one. It's Asara B'Teves. The other ones, by the way the calendar works, cannot fall out on a Friday. And the only other one that can fall out on a Friday is Tanis Esther. But when it falls out on a Friday, we don't observe it on a Friday. We would observe it. We push it back to Thursday. If let's say Saturday night is Purim, we don't have the fast day Erev Shabbos. We do it Thursday. So we'll talk about that. Really, that's fine. It's just not ideal to really be fasting on Friday. All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and
Thank you.
I look forward to continuing forward with this simon next time.
Thank you.
Yeshikawach, Rabbi Yeshikawach.